Okay, so it is nearly 7 o'clock in the UK, and at this time of year, I'm using the death throes of daylight to film. I'm going to have to do this video quite quickly. This came for me today, this Nigella Kitchen DVD collection, so I've been loving watching these.
Authentic praise. It's my pleasure.
I love Nigella Lawson. I thought I would finally come in and do the folklore book tag, which is a tag based on Taylor Swift's latest album, which came out, I think, at the end of July. But most people did this tag like 2 months ago, but I'm lazy, so I've not done it yet. And today I went for a photo shoot. I don't know if you can see my jumper, this massive turtleneck jumper. This is my favourite turtleneck jumper of all time now. I adore this jumper. And I went for a kind of photo shoot for this tag today that I just did with my friend. So I've done pictures for each song from the album. And then the book tag is, you do questions based on each song. There are 16 songs on this album, which is really weird for a Taylor Swift album. Most Taylor Swift albums have 13 songs, and people think that's weird, like it's some kind of Illuminati occult thing that she always has 13 songs on an album. But I think it's just because she thinks the number 13 is a bit lucky for her. I don't know. But she had 16 on this album, so there's 16 questions. I don't want this video to go on for, too long, so I'm just going to run through the books quite quickly. And I've got the questions written down here. Okay, question 1. Song number 1. The One. A couple that you don't agree with from a book. And I would have to say Ron and Hermione. They have nothing in common, apart from being Gryffindors and trauma-related bonding. They don't really have anything in common, so I don't really believe they would get together, unless it was like a drunken hookup. I don't understand at all what Hermione would want from Ron, other than a mild distraction. Nope. Right. 2. Cardigan. A book you loved except for the ending. And for this, I would say Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. This is on the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2017. A lot of people wanted it to win. I did really like it. For me personally, I think this was probably my favourite year of the Women's Prize that I followed. First of all, Gwendolyn Riley was on there. And second of all, there were just lots of good, interesting books that year, I think, in 2017. This book I loved, except for the ending. It's more just there was like a plot reveal at the end. It was related to the woman not being able to have children in it, and I was like, why is this being revealed now? Like, you could have just told me this at like page 90, not at the end of, what was it, a 300-page novel? Just under 300 pages. It doesn't really make sense to have that revelation there, except for the plot. But apart from that, I really loved this book. And a lot of it was like set in a hair salon, so I enjoyed that. The Last Great American Dynasty. A villain you can't help but love. And for this, I'm not actually going to choose one from a book. But it is actually from a book, because I believe the film was based on a book called The Rescuers. So I'm going to choose Medusa from the Disney movie, The Rescuers. She's just a foul villain, and she's just crazy and fun. And she's a terrible driver like me.
Of course, we have. But we must try harder, mustn't we? Out of my way, you road hog!
Okay, 4. Exile. Favourite dark, hard-hitting contemporary. And for this, I would have to say Who They Was by Gabriel Kreutzer. I did a review of this. This is on the Booker Prize long list for this year. This was about a guy from London street gang. This is really violent and brutal and good. Okay, 5. My Tears Ricochet. Not the best title for a Taylor Swift song. A character whose death destroyed you. And I don't really get destroyed by deaths in novels or movies, but I did find that the death at the end of this horrible edition of this book, the death of the father, I was like, oh my god, the father, no, don't leave the little boy alone. So the ending of this I did find really hard hitting. There's not that many words on each page. Yeah, I read this in a day, so it was quite an intense experience, but I did really enjoy this book. The bit with the father dying at the end, I was like, clutching my pearls. Right. 6, Mirrorball. A character who undergoes a major character development. I would have to say Will Beckwith from The Swimming Pool Library by Alan Holmhurst. This was his debut. He's probably Britain's leading gay writer, even though is he 60 now? He must be like in his 60s now. But he came out with this 1989, I think. In this, Will is the main character, and he's this upper class posh twat boy who's just swanning around London, enjoying all his privileges, and then by the end of the novel, he is like, oh shit, I'm upper class. Like, my father is Lord Beckwith. I am really, really responsible for people, and it's like 80s, gay, London, Thatcher. I'm really, really need to get my act together. So, yeah, I love this book. 7. 7 is 7. I think that's the title of that song, which is your favourite childhood book. For this, I would probably say I had quite a lot of favourite books growing up because I read quite a lot of different books, so I had quite a few favourites at different times. But all in all, I would probably say Attack of the Tentacled Terror by Susan Gates. This is probably one of the main reasons why octopuses are my favourite animals, because this is just such a fun book. It's really short. How long is it? 90 pages with pretty big font, but this is just such a cute story. This little boy goes to his great aunt's for the weekend, and his parents are like too busy for him, so they just palm him off on his great aunt. And then his great aunt has like these magical aquatic abilities, and then there's a whole plot that turns devious where he's like, is it my great aunt or is it some imposter? But yeah, as a kid, I adored this book. And I reread it loads. And I think I even tried writing my own version of it. But because I didn't want to just plagiarise and copy it, I tried making like a Safari Lion King type version. Yeah. So I still have that at my parents' house stashed away somewhere. But I tried writing that version of it and drew a picture of a lion on the front. But really, I wanted to write about the tentacles and the aquatic abilities, but I couldn't because it had already been done. But really, I could have just written a fan fiction thing. So yeah, I loved this book as a kid. And I've never ever read or heard anything else about any other books by this author. But I also do like the cover. It's got a fun cover. Okay. 8, August. Your favourite summer read? I'm not sure about this. Bonjour Tristesse by Francois Sagan. I read this last January maybe, or February, but it is a really summery book. It's set in one summer, and it follows Cecile, I think her name is, and I think she's only 16, 17, and she just flops about on the beach over the summer. She has a French lover, and then her father, who she has quite a close relationship with because her mother's dead, her father gets like a new girlfriend, and Cecile doesn't like that. So yeah, this was a really good read, and I think it's only 100 pages. Bonjour Tristesse, but yeah, that was a really good read, and that was her debut as well. I think she only wrote it when she was 18, but yeah, this is really good. 9, This Is Me Trying, a book that pulls you out of a slump. I go to various favourite books when I'm in a slump, but one favourite that I know would pull me out of any slump would be Loitering with Intent by Muriel Spark. I love Muriel Spark, and this is such a good book. It's just so sassy, and the plot is so intense and ridiculous and focused, and the writing in it is just astonishing. The narrator of it is, she's writing the novel. It's set in 1950, I think, in the middle of the 20th century, and she becomes like a secretary for this autobiographical association. So it's this group of like hack writers. They're these like posh people who want to write their memoirs. So she is basically given the task of writing up their memoirs, but their memoirs are so boring that she ends up like making up stuff, and then it all just escalates, and it just is so fun. Let me read you the little quote from the book on the front. It was a long time ago. I've been writing ever since with great care. I always hope the readers of my novels are of good quality. I wouldn't like to think of anyone cheap reading my novels. So that's not Muriel Spark, that is the narrator of the novel, but it's such a good book, and it's short as well. But it's like Spark at her best. Number 10, Illicit Affairs, a guilty pleasure read. A guilty pleasure read would be literary biographies for me. I have picked this Angela Carter biography, The Invention of Angela Carter by Edmund Gordon. This won the Somerset Maugham Award, which is befitting actually because Angela Carter won the Somerset Maugham Award herself as well. He writes about how she travels to Japan after she won the Somerset Maugham Award. But yeah, this is such a good biography, and just the storyline of it, because Angela Carter, I think she was in her mid-50s when she died, so she wasn't that old. And I think seeing the span of her career is just fascinating. Like, she's such a fascinating writer. And I think if you're not sure about her fiction, this would definitely be a good place to start with Angela Carter, because her fiction isn't really biographical, but the way Edmund Gordon talks about her life, you can read certain biographical references in them, like the way like older women feature in the books, the way men feature in the books. So you can see glimpses of her own personal life in her fiction, but only like from far, far away. And I think if maybe you don't get on with Angela Carter, or you're not sure where to start with Angela Carter, this might help give you some bearings as to which books of hers would probably be best for you. But yeah, this is such a good read. Okay. Number 11, Invisible String, my favourite song of the Taylor Swift album.
Green was the color of the grass where I used to read at Centennial Park. I used to think I would meet somebody there.
Your dream bookish boyfriend / girlfriend. And for this, I would have to say Queequeg from Moby Dick. Queequeg is just so strong and burly and loyal and disciplined. Oh yeah, he's lush. This is a horrible edition of Moby Dick. At some point I do want to get a nicer edition of Moby Dick, but this will do for now. But yes, I adore Queequeg. Number 12, Mad Woman. Your favourite strong female protagonist, and befitting the title of the song, I have chosen Jane Eyre. Look at her on the back. Oh my god, this is such a lush edition. Deckled edges, hello. Bertha Mason, the mad woman in this book, isn't my favourite strong female character, but Jane Eyre definitely is. So yeah, I would have to say Jane Eyre, undoubtedly. Number 13, Epiphany, a character who has overcome a lot. Esther Greenwood in The Bell Jar. I think supposedly recovering from a mental breakdown is a huge feat for anybody. And number 14, a character who deserved better. And for this, I have chosen Pride and Prejudice. I have this beautiful cloth-bound edition, looking a bit worse for the wear nowadays, but I love that. I think it looks really vintage like this. And I would choose Lydia, I think it is, who marries Mr. Wickham, who, you know, she runs off with a man when she's like only 16 and giddy. But I mean, like, what 16-year-old girl doesn't love a bad boy? It's a bit unfair that just because she's 16 and she gives her virginity away to, you know, this reckless older man, why should she have to spend her whole life married to this skank? I hope that Mr. Wickham dies young and then Lydia gets to marry someone else that she loves. But I think by the end of the book, the narrator of Pride and Prejudice is like, they won't be happy though. So yeah, I think it's a bit unfair on Lydia. She was 16, she was young, she was giddy, she just wanted some dick, some fun. What's wrong with that? She shouldn't have to get married because of that. So, yeah, I think Lydia hopefully goes on to have a better life. And penultimately, 15, Peace. Your favourite fictional couple from a book. And for this, I would say Joshua Spassky and Natalie from Joshua Spassky by Gwendolyn Riley. This was her third novel. And in this, Natalie goes on a trip to Asheville. I think she's only there for maybe a week or so. They have an on-off relationship. And the way they just talk to each other, and even though they're not really properly together, I think the way they interact with each other is probably like one of the best instances of a relationship between people that I've seen in books. because it's not plot focused. The whole novel is literally just about their relationship, and it's about Natalie trotting around Asheville being like, oh my god, everything was Joshua, but everything wasn't Joshua. It's so beautiful, and the dialogue is really good in this book as well. Let me see if I can read you a little bit. Okay, here we go. Some more time passed. We'd moved the pillows and were lying the other way up in the bed, facing the gilt-framed Smoky Mountain scene over the headboard, talking again. We were talking about our childhoods. If I remember myself as a kid, Joshua said, I was so laid back. It was hilarious. I was a little stone at age like 8, I guess, because I was the youngest. I'm the youngest by 7 years, and I was unexpected. My parents must have really had it with constant supervision. I could pretty much please myself, and I liked to take it easy. My older brothers had all the pressure off Dad. They're still mad at me about that, I think. But I was just like everyone's little pet. My mum would always say that I would end up a beach bum because I like to just lay out in the backyard with a can of soda and a comic book for, days on end. I even had a little tank top that said beach bum across it. Good God. Yeah, it's pretty cute. I know, it is. I have photos. I bet you do. Joshua shrugged and narrowed his eyes at me, and then he squeezed me against him, hard until I could barely breathe. Yeah, favourite couple. Even though they're not the ideal couple, like they are. Probably my favourite. Oh my god, it's getting dark now, but luckily I'm on the last book now. So, 16, Hoax. A fictional breakup that destroyed you. And I would have to say Billy Pryor and Sarah Lum, I think her last name is, from Regeneration. This is a really, really horrible edition, but this is actually my favourite edition. I just love the typography of this edition, and it is kind of falling to pieces because of how many times I've read it. But it does look really miserable, but it is such a good book. She won the Man Booker Prize, Pat Barker did, for the 3rd instalment of the trilogy, but in the final one, basically, I'm not going to spoil it in case people want to read it, but Billy Pryor and Sarah kind of basically end up breaking up because of the war. So this opens with a letter that is actually a historical document, finished with the War of Soldiers Declaration. So Siegfried Sassoon was he was an English poet, and in real life, he wrote this letter to, I don't know, I guess Parliament, being like, stop the war, like people are dying for no reason. You're sending these boys out to the trenches and they're just dying for no reason at all. And then he gets sent to Craig Lockhart in Scotland, I believe, because they're like, oh my god, he has shell shock. That's why he wrote the letter, because he was nuts. He was off his rocker. And then, so Siegfried Sassoon is also a character in the novel, which makes it really interesting. So they're these like poets, and they're just, in a psychiatric unit. And then Billy Pryor also has shell shock, so he is in Craig Lockhart recovering. But yeah, it's such a good book. Right, it is dark now. I'm probably going to come in tomorrow to do my Sunday Reads wrap-up kind of video, so stay tuned for that. I hope you have enjoyed this. And what is your favourite Taylor Swift album? Mine is, oh my god, what would I have to say? It would depend how I was listening to the albums. Like, if I just had them on a playlist mixed with my other songs, Red would probably be my favourite album because there's quite a lot of variation on that one. But if I had to listen to an album through, start to finish, 1989 would probably be my favourite. Yeah. What is your favourite? I don't think I'm going to tag anyone because the tag was from a few months ago and I don't know if the people I watch like Taylor Swift. Yeah. Thank you for watching. All right, bye.
Betty, I won't make assumptions about why you switched your homeroom, but I think it's 'cause of me. Betty, one time I was riding on my skateboard when I passed your house. It's like I couldn't breathe.